Well, it's a dark, dark day for the world's largest democracy. Trump supporters went on the rampage and laid siege to the Capitol Hill, where the U.S. Congress was in the process of certifying Joe Biden's election as the 46th President of the United States of America. The mob scaled the walls of the Capitol, broke barricades, smashed glasses, and even entered the office of the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. Unprecedented scenes were witnessed in America.
In their thousands, they came, marching on the seat and the heart of American democracy.
USA! USA!
Breaching its defences for the first time in more than 200 years. It was British troops who carried out that attack, this time citizens, incited by their sitting president.
Americans need to stand up to these tyrannous bastards, and we need to just take our country back.
This is an unprecedented statement against America's Constitution and its electoral process. These supporters have come from all parts of the country to back the president. And even once calm is restored to the Capitol, it's clear this movement isn't going anywhere.
Police were able to secure the area, but not without a fight.
And as soon as I took my gas mask off, they sprayed me in the eyeballs with mace.
To the protesters, there are just two groups of people.
Patriots and traitors!
As the city neared curfew, they defied orders.
There it is. That's tear gas coming our way.
Police upped the ante.
That seem weird to you?
Tensions boiled over.
Well, this was an extraordinary moment. We've just witnessed police push the protesters down and form this line, this barrier around the Capitol grounds. There was violence, there was chaos, but they appeared to have achieved what they wanted, reclaiming the Capitol grounds.
Moved on, but remaining loyal to the cause and their leader, Donald Trump.
I just can't see, Trump losing when he has this kind of popularity.
He'd revved up his base earlier in the day.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. We won this election, and we won it by a landslide. This was not a close election.
The powers that be are not counting the votes, and there's no question in our mind that Trump is our president, and we want to try to save our country.
Despite his ardent supporters, the political fallout from Donald Trump's tenure is now clear. He failed his first electoral test since losing in November. Two crucial Senate seats in Georgia, both won with margins less than 2%. The Democratic wins hand Joe Biden control of the Senate.
May my story be an inspiration to some young person who is trying to grasp and grab hold of the American dream.
A stinging rebuke for the one-term president, who will leave office losing Republicans the presidency, the House and the Senate. Catherine Diss, ABC News, Washington.
Moments after United States Congress officially certified President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris' election victory. Amidst a pro-mob attack at the U.S. Capitol this morning, Donald Trump finally conceded defeat. Outgoing President Trump said that even though he disagrees with the outcome of the election, he said there will be an orderly transition on January 20th. However, Trump added that he would continue fighting to ensure that only legal votes were counted in the 2020 November elections.
Get her down! Get her light! Flashlight!
Seen reported and from reports from people who are inside the house. Take us through what's
Connect to my colleague Geeta Mohan, who's joining us live with the very latest which is going on. Geeta, unprecedented scenes were witnessed. What's the latest that we can add to this development?
The fact that unprecedented violence was witnessed at Capitol Hill, there certainly is going to be investigation on that count as to how there was such huge breach of security when all the lawmakers were in the House. That certainly is going to happen. But in the meanwhile, the moment Vermont, the 3 electoral college votes of Vermont were counted in, Biden crossed the 270 halfway mark, and is going to be taking the oath on the 20th of January. So the president of the United States of America conceded to an orderly transition, but still has not conceded defeat, Preeti, because he still says and is continuing to challenge the decision of the US Congress as also of the counting. He is going to look at all legal routes, is what he said, according to a statement that was put out by his senior aide, Dan Scavino, given the fact that his own Twitter has been blocked. So he could not tweet it out, but Dan Scavino put out the tweet saying that he's going to continue challenging the decision, although he will allow for a smooth transition. This after not just all leaders across party lines in the United States of America had come out as seeking a transition, as also world leaders from across the world.
Well, Geeta, it had also split pretty much the Republicans as well. All eyes also on the Vice President right now. What is the status and how plausible can the 25th Amendment being revoked possible? Geeta, can you hear me? All right, we seem to be having a bit of an audio connect with my colleague Geeta. We're going to try and go back to her for more updates on that story. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has said that there will be an orderly transition on the 20th January. That's what he said after all the violence that was witnessed. There is a call now for his impeachment again. There have been discussions among some members of the Trump cabinet and allies of the Trump about the 25th Amendment that I was just talking about, which would be a way to remove Trump from office. Trump has said that he will continue his fight to ensure that only legal votes are counted. What happens to Donald Trump now is that big question.
The lights were on at the White House, but a darkness had already descended on Washington in a day of high drama. Donald Trump could do little but watch as his Vice President, Mike Pence, condemned the actions of his boss's supporters.
To those who wreaked havoc in our capital today, you did not win. Violence never wins. Freedom wins.
The law and order president appeared to encourage his people, blaming his political opponents for the violence, tweeting that these are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away. It was the final straw for the social media platforms. Twitter banned him for 12 hours, Facebook for a day. And even for his strongest allies, it was too much.
All I can say is count me out. Enough is enough.
And for those Republicans who stood against him, today was the culmination of 4 years of division.
What happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States.
There are reports some in the President's cabinet have considered invoking the 25th Amendment, forcing the President out of office. They're only whispers, and it is unlikely to happen. But today's violence and the President's response will damage Donald Trump's legacy. From 3 former presidents with legacies of their own, there was unified condemnation. Barack Obama said today's violence was incited by the sitting president and called it a moment of great dishonour for our nation. Bill Clinton said the assault was fuelled by more than 4 years of poison, pitting Americans against one another. And former Republican President George Bush said he was appalled by the reckless behaviour of some political leaders since the election. In 14 days, Donald Trump will join those men as the latest former president when Joe Biden is inaugurated in front of the very building that was invaded today.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
It's tradition for previous presidents to attend the inauguration, just as they did in 2016. But Donald Trump said he won't be there. Instead, there are suggestions he'll launch his 2024 campaign at the same moment. Aides are now pleading with him to change his mind and show support for the democratic processes. Leaders around the world have expressed their deep concern and are also hoping for that smooth transition, with or without Donald Trump. It is, after all, supposed to be the bastion of democracy. Australia has upped its travel warning for the Washington area, with our Prime Minister describing the events as heartbreaking.
We hope for a peaceful and stable transition of government to the new administration elected by the American people.
With tens of millions of loyal followers, he has hinted he could run again in 4 years as a Republican or even spearheading his own party. In the interim, he may start his own media empire to promote the reality star turned president who has many more surprises ahead.
Connecting back to my colleague Geeta Mohan, who's still with us. Geeta, in the backdrop now that he's finally at least conceded that there will be a smooth transition, can the 25th Amendment still be invoked, and how important would be the role of the Vice President in all of this?
Well, the Vice President's role is critical. Now, we do know that Mike Pence went against the diktat of President Trump when he refused to take unilateral action against the consensus and the Electoral College certification. Having said that, it is unlikely that the Vice President will certainly go ahead and support a 25th Amendment, although we know that there has been not just growing clamor and call for invoking of the 25th Amendment, with cabinet members trying to garner support of cabinet members to oust President Trump. The other important aspect that still is in conversation, that still is a part of the conversation, is impeachment. So this is impeachment versus 25th Amendment, and on both counts it seems like right now there isn't enough support to really make a move on that against President Trump, given that the days are only numbered, 14 days to go before President-elect Joe Biden takes over. But we'll have to wait and see how disturbed the entire system really is. It's not just the Democrats, Preeti. Republicans also have come out and have condemned the violence that took place yesterday, and they have also condemned the manner in which President Trump has handled the entire issue. So one will have to wait and see how this really pans out. Unlikely that Vice President is going to take a stand or a step to the extent of ousting Trump, but he certainly took a stand on unilateral action against certification by the U.S. Congress of Joe Biden's victory.
Appreciate you joining us. We'll continue to come back to you for further updates on that story. Meanwhile, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube have all blocked President Donald Trump as his supporters violently stormed the U.S. Capitol. Twitter has said that Trump's account will be locked for at least 12 hours and has threatened to permanently ban it, while Facebook imposed a 24-hour block. Trump has been angered by Twitter for flagging his tweets in the past, but Twitter had not previously deleted the president's tweet. But given the violence in D.C., Trump's tweets have now been removed. Facebook has also removed a video by Trump in which he urged supporters who stormed the U.S. Capitol to go home, while also repeating false accusations about the integrity of the presidential election. YouTube has also said it has removed the Trump video for policy violation. Instagram also blocked Trump's account for 24 hours. All right, listen in to reactions coming in from the U.S., where both Democrats and Republicans are condemning the violence that has taken place.
What he has done is to speak about standing up to the encroaching, creeping socialism, which is truly a big problem with our country. I also know that the media and the high-tech companies, along with social media platforms, were also instigating folks. And when people feel that they are being snubbed, their voice is not being heard, as we all Americans, free-loving Americans, believe that should be done, I think you see a reaction. But I feel that this reaction was also instigated by bad actors. And again, it's too soon to come to conclusion, but I do understand that there is a lot of embarrassment on our part, that we should have basically made sure that this should not have happened. But the people who were there today in Washington, D.C., they were all for peaceful marches. We've had a Second Amendment, which is for gun rights rallies in Richmond, which were very peaceful. People all had their guns, but nothing happened. We've had peaceful rallies before, but at that time we saw in the evening the Antifa came and they were instigating and spitting and throwing stuff on Trump supporters. I will not be surprised when all dust is settled that there were bad actors who wanted this to play out the way it is. But again, it's disappointing what's happened.
Well, I think what social media giants are doing is good for the humanity, and it's definitely damaging, and it's definitely, hurting the image of United States across the world, where the whole world looks at America as a beacon of hope and democratic country. But at the same time, democracy is fragile, and what we have seen, the goods and evils of democracy happening live in the last 4 years. But what we also forgetting while this news is happening, in last 2 days, the Georgia elected 2 senators, for Democrat senators, and which gives them now Democrat the ability to control the Senate. So a lot of good things will be happening in coming 4 years. And what has happened today, why the National Guards did not come on time, or why there was no preparation ahead as it was done for Black Lives Movement, and all those things will help rebuild this security and institutions and everything around the capital and strengthen the democracy. So that will happen in due course of next coming days, weeks and months.
My colleague Akshita also spoke to Sarah Fisher, a senior journalist from Washington, D.C. on the attack and the rumors on whether it was pre-planned after all.
This was a well-planned, a clear, orchestrated assault on the Constitution or on the Capitol Hill. This was planned by these rioters, by the people who resorted to the violence.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you saw rioters that were wearing gear that said MAGA Civil War, January 6, 2021. So this was clearly pre-planned. I've been observing right-wing media and social media all day. There have been many posts and forums warning about today's events. I think, to my colleague's point here, this was just not expected to get as out of hand as it ended up being. We knew that there was going to be a march today in Washington, D.C. Obviously, President Trump was initially calling for support with the folks that were participating. But what we didn't know is that they were going to storm the Capitol as aggressively, tear down windows, try to get into the offices and the chamber floors. And I think the big thing to remember here is that Donald Trump didn't condemn, he didn't do what you just played until well into some of the actions further today. He waited to see if it would die down. He didn't want to tell his supporters to back down until he absolutely had to, until colleagues on the right asked him to, urged him to on television. It was one of the most memorable things that's happened in the Capitol as far back as I can remember. It will definitely live in a day of infamy for the United States as the day democracy was really tested.
Meanwhile, leaders around the world condemned the storming of the U.S. Capitol by supporters of President Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. today. Prime Minister Modi as well tweeted saying he was distressed to see news about rioting and violence in Washington, adding orderly and peaceful transfer of power is must. Former U.S. President Barack Obama in a statement said violence was incited by Trump's lies on unlawful election claims. Condemning the attack, the 43rd American president, George Bush, said he was appalled by the reckless behavior of some political leaders and the lack of respect shown for America's institutions and traditions. Bill and Hillary Clinton also took to Twitter saying the attack on the U.S. Capitol was fueled over 4 years of poisonous politics. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson called for the violence disgraceful and called for a peaceful and orderly transfer of power. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau added he's deeply anguished and saddened by the attack on democracy.
For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.